Thank you for tuning in to the Catch a Lift Fund's Coach's Corner podcast. We hope you enjoy today's episode and will consider supporting the Catch a Lift Fund and the veterans we serve. Visit our website for more information about our programs at catchaliftfund.org. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis or suicidal thoughts, please call 988 or the Veterans Crisis Line 988, followed immediately by the number 1. The views and opinions expressed during the Coach's Corner podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the Catch a Lift Fund. The Catch a Lift Fund does not verify or warrant the truth or accuracy of statements made during the podcast, and statements therein are not to be construed as an official policy or position of the Catch a Lift Fund. This podcast is provided for informational purposes only, and nothing herein should be construed as health, medical, or other professional advice. The Coach's Corner is a place for veterans to connect, heal, and share their stories. I'm Melissa Luke, the host of the Coach's Corner podcast. I am a U.S. Army Iraq War veteran, coach, and program director for the Catch a Lift Fund. The Coach's Corner is sponsored by ID Technologies. Welcome to this week's episode of the Coach's Corner. Thank you all for joining us today. We're so excited to welcome Mathius Carter. Mathius is a U.S. Army veteran, Cal veteran athlete, outreach coordinator at Road Home program, and author. Welcome to this week's episode of the Coach's Corner. We're so excited to have you here today, Mathius. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's an honor to talk to you today. I know we've got a lot to cover, so let's jump right into it. Mathius, you joined the Army in '99 in a delayed entry program. Talk to us about this decision.
Yeah, so I think probably similar to a lot of other veterans out there, service members, I kind of followed in my family's footsteps. My grandfather was in the Navy and then the Army. My father joined the Army. Growing up, I think I wanted to be just like my dad. So pretty much anything he did or he talked about or he was passionate about, I wanted to get into. Martial arts. He used to love driving Cadillacs. I got into driving Cadillacs. He went in the Army. I went in the Army. My sister did the same. She went in the Army as well. So, it's just, it's something we did. Plus, I wasn't ready for college. So, or at least I thought I wasn't ready for college.
You had a very interesting a basic training during that time. September 11th would happen. Talk to us about being at basic training and that experience of when 9/11 happened.
For sure. Yeah. I joined in August of 2001. So right before, a month beforehand. So I was right in the middle of basic training. We were doing area beautification and making sure the rocks looked pretty and the dirt was raked. And the first sergeant came and explained that we were under attack. The United States was under attack. And we had to drop everything we were doing and go get gear on and get weapons and go guard. I was at Fort Knox. Okay. So we had to guard the fort. I really didn't know what was going on. To be honest, I didn't even see the video of the planes hit the buildings until months later.
Really?
So they kept all that stuff away from all of us. Even when I went to AIT and things like that, we didn't get to see it.
How did 9/11 kind of change the dynamics while you were at basic and AIT?
I definitely think that the drill sergeants and things changed the way that they handled everything. Also, it was a little eerie to not see the planes flying that you normally see. So I think that everyone had that same feeling that it was just very, very different. It was so quiet. Yeah. But definitely, I think they did explain that what was going on and that we knew we were going to be going over, at some point. It was kind of an inevitable thing. But we finished basic training and then I went to AIT and started doing that. And it wasn't until I went to Germany where it was getting closer. That was right when we went over to Iraq was from when I was stationed in Germany.
What was your MOS, Mathius?
I was a 31 Romeo. So when I joined, I think I missed only a couple of questions on my ASVAB. So they said I could be whatever I wanted. I didn't care. I said, "Just pick something for me." So I'm sure I was
That's a dangerous statement.
yeah, I think, I was every recruiter's like, man, that was the goal, right? Whatever
Yeah.
the quota they needed to fill, but, um, they said, "Well, do you have anything you wanna do when you get out?" And I said, "Something with computers." So, of course, they got me into Signal Corps, which I didn't touch a computer for 4 years, and, so I was a multi-channel transmission systems operator. So I worked on tropospheric, antennas, and we basically set up networks for the infantry to call back up.
Okay. What do you remember most about training up to go to Iraq?
The weirdest thing was because we were in Germany and the way that the German government works with cutting down trees and blowing stuff up, they're against it. So all the trees are numbered. I didn't know that. So we
Oh
actually
my
went over
gosh.
to Poland. We went to freezing cold Poland during the winter to train to go to the desert, which was
Really? Oh my
insane.
gosh.
But yeah, but Poland, if you paid them, you were able to do whatever you wanted. So we played. We basically had some different games that we were going over scenarios. We had to dig holes and saw pits and a whole bunch of stuff, camouflage our trucks, and it was definitely different. The stand to and stand down that a lot of veterans are used to. 2 hours before the sun goes up, 2 hours before or after the sun goes down. That's like the normal time that they said uh, would be the most prevalent for like attacks. So they would have us laying in a hole, and just being able to see the heat rising from the ground was something I never experienced. It was the coldest I probably have ever been.
That's incredible. Thank you for telling us about that.
Sure.
You would go on to Iraq very soon after and deploy there in 2003. Talk to us about what it was like to be a soldier during this time, in 2003 in Iraq.
Even going over there, they were kind of trying to trick us because they didn't want us to run. So we were in Germany. They had all our bags packed for weeks before
Okay.
we shipped out, and they kept calling in the middle of the night, and we would do drills on going over to the gymnasium and getting ready to leave. And they'd be like, "Oh no, that was just practice. Go back home." So we kept doing that over and over again. And then one night we went there thinking it was practice, and
Right.
they were pulling people out of the line to teach them how to give the inoculations or what have you, the immunizations. And it was crazy because you're asking these people, "What are you giving me?" And they were like, "I'm a cook. I just
Yeah,
learned how to
right?
do this 2 seconds ago." So just that kind of stuff was crazy. And we had a handful of people that ran. They just jumped in taxis and took off.
Really?
Yeah, so I think they did that on
Oh my
purpose because they
gosh.
didn't want people to take off. It was a little surreal. It really didn't hit me. I think the first time it hit me was we were on a commercial flight. It was a normal flight. It was a two-story plane, so it was huge. I don't know what kind of plane it was, but we had normal flight attendants. We were all in our gear. I had a machine gun and a grenade launcher on me, and we're getting peanuts and drinks from a normal flight attendant. It was crazy, and we were told to keep the window blinds down because they had some sort of jets or something. I don't know what kind of. I don't know the technical term of
Yeah,
anything in the
yeah.
military. Everyone assumes if you're in the military, like all the details of every tank and every plane, and I had
Right.
no idea. I
Yeah, I
hardly
feel
knew the
that.
stuff that I was in charge of. But yeah, so I did just peeked, and you see these fighter jets or whatever they're called, like hiding near our plane, to get on under the radar to fly into Kuwait and stuff like that. It was just, it was weird. It was definitely weird. And then going over to Kuwait, right right when this was happening, I don't know if you remember, they were really worried about chemical warfare.
Yes. Yep.
So we had our normal suits, our normal BDUs, the greens, obviously,
Yep.
and those are thick. And then you have the mop gear on top of it, which is lined with charcoal. And you had to have your boots and your gloves ready and your mask. And they would do drills all the time. And anything we saw in the sky, we would have to don everything. So, I mean, I lost probably 30 pounds in a couple
Oh
of
my
weeks. It was
gosh.
insane how hot it was. But yeah, so that's how we were practicing to even go over there. So it was definitely, I saw nothing about chemical warfare when I was over in
Yeah.
Iraq, really mortars and things like that, but nothing chemically. So we got out of doing that, but it was very, very hot just getting ready to go over there.
Yeah. So you came into Kuwait. What do you remember about going into Iraq for the first time?
There was a big sign that said "Welcome to Hell." That kind of was foreshadowing, I think, for for a lot of us. The other thing that that sticks out in my mind that I've talked about for a lot of days with my therapist is they had you basically follow the truck in front of you. You know, I'm 19 years old, just turned 19 years old, and you're following the truck in front of you and there's blown up trucks on both sides
Yeah.
of you, and they're like, make sure to follow the treads in front of you because
Yeah.
there's unexploded mines around
Yeah.
here. So I mean, I guess now I can say it. Back then, I didn't know what was going on, but it was fear. Obviously it was fear. I was sweating and shaking, I'm sure. Um, but I definitely remember that feeling of first going over there and driving through that. It was intense, and that was like the first couple of minutes in there, and I think the first couple of days I could write pages about everything that happened. It was crazy.
What were some of the unique challenges, of being there during 2003? So this is before, really any infrastructure or anything is built
Okay.
up. What were some of those unique challenges?
The one thing that I think a lot of us brothers and sisters in arms and everything have a problem with, and because of war, Vietnam War, our war, all that is trust issues. Because you have somebody that for all intents and purposes, looks innocent, looks like they're not a threat whatsoever. And that was when the first person I saw in Iraq. Um, he had a little tent and there was like a stick holding up the tent, and he had a camel pen and a handful of camels. And we stop and everyone draws weapons on this man, and I didn't, I felt like a bully. I was like, why are we picking on this guy? He's got nothing. And so they zip tie him and put a bag over his head, and they start kicking over his stuff and letting the camels out. And I didn't understand what was going on, but I'm standing guard, and they start kicking around the camel pen, and they find like seven AK-47s and a whole bunch of
Oh, man.
rounds. So that was like, holy cow, the trust issues where,
Yeah.
people will smile in your face and then they'll be the ones that give your coordinates away. So that
Right.
was definitely my first interaction with an Iraqi. Um, Besides that, I mean, the stuff that I guess is a little lighter. We went without showers for 3 months. We had baby wipes. We were ill prepared. We had we didn't have up armor on our vehicles. We had vinyl doors, vinyl everything. You could throw a rock through the window. We had no my flak vest, just the old school flak vest with the Velcro that could probably take a
Oh,
9 millimeter, and that's
yeah.
it. Maybe a knife, a sharp knife. Um, the Velcro didn't even work. So this whole area in my body was wide open.
Oh, good
And
grief.
that's probably the most important area you want
Yeah, yeah, that's
to
a pretty
protect.
crucial part, right?
So we were ill prepared. We didn't have goggles. We didn't have masks for our face. The sand would just come in huge waves, like as far up as you can see, the sand would just come, and we would have to hold hands. And sometimes we'd lose some people, and they'd show up show up back like later, and they'd just be white. No
Yeah,
matter how dark they were, they would be white, and their eyes would be bloodshot. And it was a crazy time. My parents had to actually send my friends, my soldiers. Um, we had snowboarding goggles and just bandanas for masks, and my parents sent a whole bunch of stuff over there, and they were the ones that helped us get through this stuff. Our parents, not the military, unfortunately.
yeah. Looking back on it now, 20 years later, or almost 20 years later, what do you remember most about your time in Iraq?
My friends.
Yeah, yeah. Matthias, what was it like coming back to the States after being in a combat zone?
Well, coming home was a little different. I wanted to touch on that for sure. So I went from Germany to Iraq, and then from Iraq, I went back to Germany. And there were only a handful of us that got orders through stop loss. They did stop loss the first year at the end of the year, but there were 4 or 5 of us that still got orders, and we still got pushed through.
Okay.
So we got sent back, and so I went back to Germany. There was no leadership there. No one picked us up from the airport. We had to figure our way back home. There was no welcome.
Yeah.
It was snowy. You had to figure out all that stuff for yourself. You had to I had to figure out how to, who's in charge of me? Where do I live?
Right.
The
Yeah.
building wasn't even there. I mean, the building that we stayed in was no longer a barracks. I didn't know where to live. I didn't know who to talk to. All my contacts, my friends, my leadership, everyone was in Iraq still. I asked to stay and they wouldn't let me. So I got there, and basically by the time I found somebody, so we made our way back there. I get close to post. Germans were very anti-American when we first
Okay.
got back. We were getting fireworks thrown at us, people yelling at us. There was a lot of
Oh
anti-American
my gosh.
rallies. There was just, like basically, they were some of my friends were saying they were Canadian because they didn't want people to bother them, but I didn't say that. But
Yeah.
but basically, no one in charge of us, and they said, "Hey, we don't even know what to do with you. Take a couple weeks off." So you tell some people that, like
Right.
that are, I just turned 20 at that time. I have a
Right.
lot of money in the bank because I've been in Iraq for a year, and you just tell me to go have fun for 2 weeks by myself.
Yeah.
Long stories, but a lot of fun
Yeah.
stories, but definitely not appropriate for now. but but yeah, when I got back to the United States, I can see that there was a lot of obviously everyone loved the military here, and they
Right.
did beautiful things for people coming back. But unfortunately, when I got over to Fort Hood, I was with everyone that was held back that didn't go to war. So I got treated that way, even though I came back
Oh,
from
geez.
war.
Yeah.
So while everyone's having a good time and get to relax when they got back, I was like cutting grass and doing a whole bunch of that
Right.
kind of stuff. And there was a welcome home event or whatever, big concert with Ludacris and a whole bunch of other people. And I was so tired of cutting grass and all that stuff. I got a shirt that said security, and I just pushed past everybody. And I got to meet Ludacris and Jessica
Oh,
Simpson
nice.
and a whole bunch of other Drew Carey, a whole bunch of other people. So that was fun. But the cool part was when I got home to visit, because we were some of the first that got back, I got invited to a lot of different schools, colleges, um, to just be on panels to talk about what happened. And that was
Okay.
probably one of the most moving things that happened to me when I got back was I was on a panel with one Korean War vet, probably a handful of Vietnam vets, and then myself. And we were talking about everything, whatever questions people had. And one person said, knowing everything that you've been through, would you do it again? Every single one of us raised our hands. There's something
Yeah.
weird about vets.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
that we would run toward danger versus run away from it.
Right.
It's something that's admirable for sure, and it makes for friendships that you would never know that you actually would be friends with people that are different wars, different
Right.
ages, and all that stuff. We have that common thing inside. It's crazy.
Talking about kind of those panels for a minute and different opportunities like that in the early, months or years after the war, did you find that therapeutic at all?
No,
Yeah. Yeah.
not at all. But it was one of them was kind of fun. I got to go to a kindergarten, and I was like, "What am I supposed to talk to kindergartners about?"
That's
What's funny is it's
yeah,
very
that
similar
wow.
to the book that we're going to talk about, but
Yeah.
what am I supposed to talk about kindergartners about? I got to sit in the special chair on the special rug, and the kids just circled around me. And I tried to print out some pictures that would be fun, showing what
Right.
tanks look like and the different animals that I saw over there with the scorpions and all that other stuff. Um, and so we talked a little bit about basic training, a little bit about gas chambers and boogers and other things like
Yeah.
that little kids think are hilarious. But when we talked about the war, I kept it really high level, obviously, and watered down. And I thought I reached these kids. I was like, wow, because I said, do you guys have any questions? Every single kid's hand went up. I was like, holy cow,
Yeah.
I reached these kids. I should be a teacher. And then, and then I started calling on the kids, and they were like, have you seen the fear factor that blah, blah, blah? Have you seen the fear factor that, and the teacher's like, put your hands down if you have questions about fear factor.
Oh
So
my
like
gosh.
all the hands went down except for one. And I called on him, and he was like, my brother's in the army. Do you know him? And it was just cute, and it shows
Yeah.
how innocent they are. And
Right.
so I really like that. But yeah, I mean, it took a long time for me to go through
Yeah.
therapy and get help and stuff like that.
Right. Matthias, you would end up going back to college pretty quickly, after Iraq and everything. Talk to us about that decision.
So right after I was spent my time in the military, I figured I either have to go to college or I have to stay in the military. And at that time, I was like, I would rather do anything than stay in the
Yeah.
military. But so I started college 2 weeks later, and I did fantastic. I mean,
2
I
weeks, wow, that's
2 weeks
incredible.
after I
Yeah,
got out, I
okay.
started school. So it was definitely a learning curve. I mean, I
Yeah,
was older than everybody else. The friends that I made were seniors that were about to leave. So I had to keep making new friends, keep making new friends. And so it was definitely a little different. And I would go to parties and people would look at me and nod and say, "How you doing, officer?" Because they would assume I was an undercover and things
yeah,
like that. So but that's actually when I started getting help because I had a hard time focusing and I did everything. I sat in the front, I wrote notes, I tried hard, I studied. So then I went to the doctor and said, I think I have ADHD. And the doctor started asking me questions about halos when I drive. Do you see
okay,
halos around the lights? Do you see, asking me how I sleep? And I said, I sleep normal. I sleep with my clothes on top of my bed. And so at that time, that made sense to me.
yeah,
And
yeah,
um, so I was explaining how I check my doors, I check my windows, all that stuff, and I need to have noise going on and all these things. And basically, they said I had PTSD, and I wouldn't even have thought that I had PTSD. Um, so I started getting help from then on, and it was a long time coming, but yeah, I started working on that a little bit, and then I learned the different modalities that all these places have and which ones I hate and which ones seem to be working better. And so for years, I was going back and forth trying to get help and then stopping. And it's kind of like a bell-shaped curve, you start getting help and it gets better and it gets worse and worse and worse. And then it plateaus and then it starts getting better.
yeah.
But every time it got bad, I just gave up because it was too hard.
What do you think, helped you continue to go back, though?
So I always wanted to be a dad, so I have a great dad. And my goal was to not be messed up for my future children.
Yeah,
So I have some friends that fathers were in Vietnam, and on Fourth of July they take sleeping pills, and they've never worked on their trauma. And I'm trying to help them now with the job that I have now.
right,
Um, but I didn't want to do that. I enjoyed going to watch fireworks. I enjoyed going to carnivals and things where people were around and all that stuff. And I didn't want to take that away from my future kids. So every year I forced myself to go to fireworks. I forced myself to do this stuff. I didn't know it was exposure therapy. I
right.
just, like I could take it for maybe 20 minutes and then I would bawl my eyes out and leave. And my friends knew that and they supported me. And it got better and better
Yeah.
slowly. But, until recently, I haven't even started to work on my trauma. It's like this year I started working on my trauma or late last year.
So we'll definitely, we're gonna a lot of stuff will swing back around to that. Um, I did wanna ask you though about so you would continue on with school, earning a master's in business and a master's in education. What was it like for you to continue on to that higher education, Matthias?
Well, I realized that I love learning, so I didn't know that, especially in high school. I loved going to school, but it was more of a social thing for me than it was studying and doing work. And I was super, super lazy. And once I got out of the service, I realized I could do anything I put my mind to. And once you realize that, it's like game over. Anything you put your
Yeah,
mind to, you just knock it out. So, after I got my undergraduate degree in dietetics and nutrition, and and then I went on to work in banking because I didn't want to do an unpaid internship because I was like, I just did 4 years in the army, I did 4 years in college.
right,
I'm not
right.
going to do another 2 years before I can actually live my life. So I went into banking, and then I got my MBA, and then I got laid off, and then I went back to school again. So I like to collect, I guess, degrees.
Matthias, what would you say to, any veterans in particular, that are listening and considering going back to school, but, either they're nervous or they're just they're struggling with that thought of being that untraditional student, or maybe they've tried before, early on, and it just didn't work out. What would you say to them?
I made some really good relationships with the professors, the teachers, things like that. And the students that got to work with me and got to learn my past a little bit viewed me as a mentor. So I've
Yeah.
always liked that. I was in martial arts growing up and I was, a leader and an instructor. So I've always been in that type of position where people kind of look up to me.
Right.
So I kind of led them as well. I mean, I did study groups and I would invite everybody in and they looked at me as like a older sibling or something like that. So it's definitely worth it. I mean, it's worth it to go back to school to do everything you can to better yourself, and learning should never stop for sure.
Absolutely. You are part of, a very incredible program now, where you continue to give back into the veteran community. Talk to us about becoming a part of the Road Home program, Matthias.
So it was a little bit of a process as well. So I started, I was working in banking, I was working in fraud. I wasn't enjoying it. It was just a corporate job. I didn't like what I did, but it was money and, I was helping some people.
Okay.
But so an executive director, her name's Laura from Veterans Path to Hope, reached out to me, and they help veterans with that are homeless or at risk of being homeless.
Okay.
And she said, "Hey, would you ever consider helping veterans?" And I was like, "You know what? Yeah, I would love to. That would be amazing." So I started working with her. I was a case manager, and I liked the job. It was purpose. I had a purpose. I
Yeah.
actually woke up and I felt excited to go to work. I knew that I was going to help somebody, and that was just amazing because otherwise, I was kind of like Garfield on Mondays. I hated Mondays. I didn't want to go to work. Just you would have any excuse to try to get out of work.
Right.
But now, I mean, I was like, wow, I love what I do. I can't wait to share that. And but unfortunately, as a case manager, you're working very, very closely with, veterans that are struggling, that are homeless, that are living in abandoned buildings, and don't know where their next meal is going to be coming from, and things like that. And we lost a handful of veterans the same year to suicide on my caseload.
Okay.
And then one of my friends that I was served in Iraq with took his own life as well. And that was kind of the straw for me.
Yeah.
And I thought I was mentally okay because I've gone through all these programs. I've been
Right.
working for over 10 years on my own trauma. I thought I was okay, but I obviously wasn't.
Yeah.
And now I know that it's always a work in progress. It's never going to be, you're never going to
Right.
be perfect. You always have to work on it. It's like everything else. And so I reached out to the VA, and I have nothing bad to say about the VA, but they are inundated. They are very
Right.
backed up, and so they were 2 months behind for an intake. And at the time, I didn't have 2 months. I felt like I was in a dark place, and so I reached out to Road Home program. I reached out to my boss now, but at that point, she was in my position now,
Okay.
and I explained to her that I need to talk to somebody now. And within an hour, I got an intake. And by the next day, I started talking to somebody. And so, Road Home program, to be honest, like saved my life. And so now, when they told me this job was open, I had to jump on board because I had to be in a position where I can help others find purpose and love themselves again, and realize that they're worth being
Yeah.
around.
Yeah. Absolutely. Matthias, what type of work are you doing for the Road Home program?
So I'm an outreach coordinator. So I'm a community outreach
Okay.
coordinator. There's 5 of us on the team, and we break up the whole U.S. So we cover a whole bunch of different states. And so what we do is we reach out to organizations to kind of explain what we do and make sure that they know how to refer, and they know that we'd be an asset to help
Right.
veterans, and to team up and try to combat this veteran suicide or service member suicide. So Road Home program is a nonprofit through Rush University Medical Center, and they help service members, veterans, active duty, National Guard, everybody with the invisible wounds of war. So PTSD, anxiety, depression, and military sexual trauma. They do that at no cost. The service members don't have to have a dime in their pocket. If they're active, we don't report to their chain of command.
Okay. Yep.
We'll fly service members, veterans, anybody out from anywhere in the country to Chicago for a 2-week intensive outpatient program, which basically, in a nutshell, it's kind of like basic training.
Okay.
It's kind of like the difference between going to the gym 2 times a week for a year, that's kind of like the traditional outpatient treatment
Right,
for
right.
mental health. Or to go to basic training. Yeah, basic training, a lot of people didn't like basic training or it was hard. But at the end, you're in amazing shape. You accomplish something and you're stronger because of it. And that's very similar to what we do in a nutshell. I mean, everyone learns different in school, everyone heals different. And I learned firsthand that there's certain modalities that I'm not okay with, and there's certain ones that really, really help. So what they do is they do everything. They do individual treatment, group therapy, they do mindfulness, which I didn't even know, Melissa, what mindfulness was until I started working here. They told me, they were like, I said, "What's mindfulness?" I mean, I'm sorry, my ignorance, I didn't know. And they were like, "Well, a lot of veterans care a lot about other people, but they don't really care too much about themselves."
Yeah.
And it was like,
Yeah.
I just, holy cow, if that didn't hit it right on the head, I would literally do anything for anybody,
Right.
but it was really hard to do anything for myself.
Yeah.
And so they do mindfulness, they do yoga, they do art therapy, which is amazing. That one, if it doesn't tug at your heartstrings, I don't know what would. They give the service members a mask, a plaster mask, and on the inside they want you to, or on the outside they want you to depict what or how you think society sees you, and on the inside how you see yourself.
Mm.
And that's sad.
Yeah.
It's sad,
Yeah.
but it puts thoughts,
Right.
to an actual tangible thing that you can look at, and it's crazy. But they do acupuncture, they do sleep hygiene. They have a chaplain on staff that he's a special forces, and he's amazing. He helps with moral injury and just spirituality, and they do everything because everyone heals different. And they do that in 2 weeks. So they do it in,
Okay.
like a 9 to 4 situation.
Okay.
For
Yep.
2 weeks, they have the nights off, they have the weekends off to kind of build that camaraderie with your
Right.
brothers and sisters. And at the end, it's absolutely amazing, the numbers. We've all had to do the self-diagnostic criteria when we go to the
Yeah.
VA. When was the last time that you felt like you wanted to harm yourself or someone else? Or,
Yeah.
when was the last time you had intrusive thoughts?
Right.
When you look at the numbers that came in and then the numbers when they leave, 85% or more drop significantly, and over 50% wouldn't even be considered to have PTSD going forward by that self-diagnostic sheet that they fill out. So the numbers are amazing. They do a fantastic job, and our clinicians are very empathetic. A lot of them are service members themselves, and it's just an absolutely awesome program. If anything else, the best things to remember about this is just we take any era, so pre 9/11 and post 9/11,
Yep.
any discharge status. So even if a service member, for some reason, we've noticed that a lot of service members that get dishonorably discharged or other than honorable, you could tie it back to the PTSD or what they
Right.
went through,
Yeah.
MST,
Yep.
PTSD, whatever. So we help any discharge status at all. They don't have to have insurance. They don't have to work with the VA. We just, basically anybody that has ever worn a shirt or a uniform for one day,
Yeah.
we'll take them. So it's an absolutely amazing program, and I'm lucky to be part of it and to spread that word.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on, Matthias, and talking to us about it, and thank you for your continued service. Where is the Road Home program located?
So it's in Chicago. So it's connected to
Okay.
Rush University Medical Center in Chicago. It's part of the Warrior Care Network. So there's 4 academic medical centers throughout the U.S. that are all part of the Warrior Care Network. One
Okay.
one is connected to Mass General and Harvard over in Massachusetts. Then we got one in Atlanta, one in UCLA called Operation Mend, and then us in Chicago. And each one of us have a little bit different, but we're very similar in the way that we don't take you don't need to have insurance, you don't need to have money,
Right.
and all that stuff. The big difference for us is we have a distinct cohort specifically for military sexual trauma, which the
Okay.
other ones are kind of all lumped in together, and we saw the value in having it separated.
How do veterans apply for the program?
There's a handful of different ways. Sometimes they get referred by their clinicians or someone that's heard of us. That's obviously an awesome way because then it shows that our word's getting out. But otherwise, we you can call, or you can email. So it's roadhomeprogram.org or 312 942 8387. That's 312-942-VETS. Um, so that's the other way. We've been doing a lot of advertising for like the Chicago Cubs and the Marquee Network and things like
Okay.
that. So people that enjoy watching the Cubs, we've had some referrals from that as well, which is pretty cool.
That is cool. Well, that's tremendous. Thank you again, Matthias, for telling us about that. And we'll make sure that in the show notes, we do link over to Road Home Program. I want to shift gears here a little bit, but I don't even know really if it's shifting because this is such
I'll
a
connect
a
with
big part
you.
of of your story, really. You recently created a book. Talk to us about this book and what really spurred you to take on that project.
So, like I said, I was working at the smaller nonprofit, and I moved over to a road home program. So, one of my duties or jobs that we do as outreach coordinators is we go to functions and we set up a table and we give out brochures and kind of talk to people about what we do. And then on the fun part, we get to go to these big sporting events and give out T-shirts and tchotchkes and
Yeah,
yo-yos. We just a whole bunch of swag to get the word out. We wanted
right.
everyone to see and know who we are. Well, I went to the Chicago Wolves. It's like a minor league hockey team in Chicago. There was a military appreciation night, and probably thousands of military members there, all watching the game. And we set up, and my son was with me. He was 4 years old, and he loves to ride around on my shoulders everywhere. So he was on my shoulders, and one of the people that worked there said, "If you haven't seen our opening number, you need to see it. They spend a lot of money on the opening number." So I was like, "Oh, fantastic!" So I
Yeah,
walked in there. We got really close, and pyrotechnics started going off, and that was cool. But then they started blowing the fireworks, the white flash booms, and those ones affect me more than any other one. That I can deal with watching fireworks with the colors, and that makes sense to me. But I don't understand why people like the white flash boom ones. And now that I'm working through it, I think it has a lot to do with like trip flares that went off, and you had to like
yeah,
close your eye, and then also the noise sounds very similar to a mortar.
yeah.
So I know that's a trigger for me. So my son was on my shoulders. I just turned around and tried to leave. And my son Vincent he's like, "Daddy, I want to watch it." So I'm a dad first. So I braced against the wall, and I took it. I just dealt with it. And then I walked back into the vestibule where we had our table set up. And my boss, she's done 3 tours herself, and she's a Marine, but she's also a mom, so she knew that it was important to come over and get the attention off of me while I gathered my composure. So I was drinking some water, and she was asking my son his favorite color and favorite animal and all that stuff. And you know, I told her, I was like, "How am I supposed to stand at this table talking about mental health when I'm like a poster child for someone that needs help?" And she explained that there's value in that it shows that I've gotten a lot of help, but there are bad days too,
Right.
and it's kind of like a heartbeat. There's highs and lows,
Yeah,
and it's never going to just be a flat line. And that's something that it took me a long time to learn, because I always wanted that. you know I always want to just feel normal, but there is no normal. And so I went to my therapist the next day, and I told him what happened. And I said, "I'm just glad my son didn't see me struggle. If I had any goals if I had a goal in my life, it would be so my son didn't see me like lose composure
yeah,
or struggle." And he made a face. He was like, "Mm." And I said, "What?" And he's like, "We'll talk about it next time." I was like, "I feel like we need to talk about it
yeah,
now." And so he said, "Well, you need to figure out an age appropriate, healthy way to explain this to your son." So I love him. He's amazing. He's from the vet center. He's absolutely amazing at what he does, and he's helped me a lot. So I took that home. I kind of took it home, and I sat in it and just thought about it. And I was like, "Man, how am I supposed to explain everything that I've been through,
yeah,
to my son? Like hypervigilance, hyperarousal, negative self-talk, you know, um, nightmares, anxiety, depression,
Yeah.
fear in general. How are you supposed to explain fear to a kid that doesn't know fear, doesn't even know what that means? And sorry, so I figured out that I would try to make a children's book. So I I called one of my friends that his name's Nick Atchison. He's the artist, the illustrator. Absolutely amazing man. Also was in Iraq at the same time as me. I didn't know it. We were kind of attached to. He was with Third ID, and I was attached to Third ID when we crossed over. So we never saw each other, but that's just it was cool that we were both there at the same time. We have similar, issues PTSD wise. He's got 5 kids, so he's a dad as well. And so I was like, this would be an awesome idea for 2 combat vets that are dads that are just trying to explain this to their kids.
Right.
I just don't want my kid to be messed up when he grows up. And I think this will help. And just telling my story to him, I think will help open up the lines of communication. And the most important part of my book, I think, if anybody looks at it or reads it or whatever to their kids, is the getting help part. Finding the right person to help you, and then it's not his fault. I've read other books that just kind of explain PTSD in the way that it's explaining why the dad is angry all the time, why he yells, but there's no like answer. There's no explanation. And that's where, it works for a lot of people and that's fine, but it didn't resonate for me.
Right.
Because I wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. I didn't want to. I just wanted to find something, kind of like finding a greeting card. It's easier to read one that just means a lot than to write one, get a blank one. Everyone can just grab a blank one and write their own. But I wasn't trying to just grab a blank card. I wanted something that would help me explain this to my son. And so I asked Nick if he would jump on board with me, and he was up for it. So he helped me water it down a lot because, like my intrusive thought, unfortunately, is watching someone burn to death in front of me. And that was something that I just started working through. And I was like, how do you water that down?
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, maybe we can show like a Humvee that's on fire or something like that. And he helped me water it down even more because, we're not trying to make it traumatic for kids either.
Yeah, right.
And I think we did a great job. I think we did a great job in trying to explain. It's kind of like in nutrition. When I went to get a dietetics degree, they have a lot of books that are like, eat this, not that,
Right.
And it's kind of what was going through my mind. It's like, you see fireworks, you see this. I see fireworks, I see this. Yeah. You see a party with balloons. I'm waiting for one of them to pop. I'm waiting for someone to come around the corner. It's just a lot of things that are just totally black and white, different,
Yeah.
And so that's why I wrote it. And I'm going to be working with a clinician that's also a professor at Rush University Medical Center, and he's going to be like a liaison for us going into the next age group. Because we're going to water it down less and kind of talk about more pressing things like TBI and survivor's guilt and, irrational fears and different things like that. So
I had the pleasure of getting the book. The book is called Instead of Sheep, A Soldier's Way of Explaining PTSD to His Son. And it was an absolutely incredible book to read. And, the this, not that, I thought it explains so much because, I obviously hadn't seen the book. I heard you talk about it to Kaylee and myself, but, I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to read it because I thought that, like, how do you explain the one that really probably resonated with me the most was the fear, right? And, it's depicting, they're at kind of like a mall or in a food court area. And, how do you depict that? And I just want to, if it's all right, read that page, Mathius.
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
So this particular page, it's sometimes daddy overreacts to loud noises or busy places. Daddy is always waiting to see dangerous faces. I mean, that really hit me because that's something I've struggled with, with my daughter. How do you explain this stuff? How do you make it age appropriate? So I definitely encourage anyone, to check out this book. It's incredibly done, beautiful illustrations. The writing is terrific. Again, we'll make sure there it is. Love that title too. So we'll make sure that that is down in the show notes for everybody. And man, I am so excited to continue to follow you, and any follow up work you do with this, because that's going to be so invaluable for our community. So thank you again for what you're continuing to do for not only the veteran community but also the families. It's just tremendous.
Thank you. It was a big compliment. One of my friends from high school that doesn't have children right now, he bought it just to kind of understand what some of his friends went through and continue to go through.
Right.
That was really cool that he reached out and was like, "Wow, I didn't know what kind of stuff you guys went through. I just thought you guys were messed up, And that's like
Yeah. Right.
that's a normal
Yes.
response, They just, back in the day they called it shell shock and no one talked about it. And because of the Vietnam vets getting treated so bad, that's the reason why we're opening up to mental health more, and there are more
Right.
opportunities for us to get okay. So it's powerful.
Yeah. It definitely is. I want to talk to you, Mathius, about Catch a Lift and your fitness and all of the great stuff you have going on that side too. How did you find the Catch a Lift program?
So as an outreach coordinator, my job is to just reach out to a whole bunch of different organizations. So I look for profit and nonprofit, and especially in the veteran space. And I came across Catch a Lift Fund, and I reached out and spoke to some people about partnering up, trying to see how we could help each other, help veterans. And one of the things that we're encouraged to do, because our team is special compared to the rest of Road Home program or Rush in general, my entire team, we have 3 Marines, 2 Army, my executive directors, Navy and Army. My boss is a Marine. I mean, it's all military. And
Right.
so we're encouraged to use these organizations for ourselves as well, ourselves. And so I reached out, I said I was interested. And at the time, I already started my journey a little bit on losing weight. I got hurt in Iraq and I ended up, back then I was young, dumb. And when I got hurt and I wasn't able to do the working out, which we were all used to, you're
Right.
used to poor habits, let's say that, drinking and eating poorly, but then you would go run through the woods for 5 miles and
Yeah.
work out. And, so
Right.
it kind of balanced. You just always looked like you were in good shape, but inside you were not in good shape
Yeah.
whatsoever. And so when I stopped working out, I gained, I think, 90 pounds in a year. It was insane. And then I was just chasing that for the longest time. And so when I got married, I had a stepdaughter, and she wanted to get into martial arts, and I used to be in martial arts, and so I was like, let's do it. So I lost like 100 pounds,
Heck yeah.
and then COVID happened, and then I think everybody put on
Yeah.
some COVID
Yeah.
weight, and
Absolutely.
so I put on 30 pounds of COVID weight, and I wanted that off. I saw that I was doing well, and I'm like, I want that off. And when I ran across Catch a Lift Fund, I got involved, and like I told you when we first talked, there are a lot of organizations out there that are like, here, let me pay for your gym membership for a year because we appreciate you, and that's amazing, and that's probably perfect if somebody's already has that dedication and that intestinal fortitude or what have
Yeah.
you. But if I could do it myself, I would have never been fat, So
Right. Yeah.
I need that push. I need someone to kick me in the butt and tell me to do stuff or make sure I have that accountability.
Yeah.
And that's why I really appreciated Catch a Lift Fund. There was that accountability aspect. Every single week, people are checking in on you. You get like motivational text messages. Like, just there's so many opportunities for people to help you succeed. It's amazing. And so I did that. I did the HIT program. I did my own body weight. And I think I lost like 20 something pounds.
That's
So
tremendous.
it was really good. And then at the end, they were like, congratulations, you can either have a gym membership or you can buy a piece of equipment for your house. So I want to get back into martial arts and fighting and things like that. And so I picked this really cool thing called Light Boxer. And I have it in my room, so I have to look at it every day. So my
Yep.
son and I, he wants to be like me, just like I want to be like my dad.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so he sees me do this. He's like, I want to do it, but he's too short because he's little. So I have to put him on my shoulders, and then he punches. But
Oh, that's so cool.
even him punching this to music, you have to hit it a specific, you have to hit it so hard for it to light up. in the first couple of days, and it didn't even register his punches. By the end of the first week, he was putting his weight into it, and I was seeing green, and I saw the progression of him even.
Oh, that's so
And
cool.
so that was cool to see
Yeah,
that my motivation motivated him. And then I learned that I
absolutely.
could do it myself, that I can do it myself. I don't need to have, somebody else doing it with me in order for me to be successful.
Yeah.
So I started doing that, got involved with another organization as well because of my job. And my first day back at the gym, so December 28th, my first day back at the gym, I went swimming because I wanted to take it easy, went swimming, and then went in the sauna and finished on my day. And I was driving home and my chest felt tight. And then I looked in the mirror when I was about to take a shower and my jaw hurt. And I was like, man, why does my jaw hurt so bad? And I Googled it and it was like heart attack, heart
Oh
attack.
my gosh.
So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to drive myself to the ER. So I was about to drive 45 minutes to the VA because that's what I'm used to doing.
Right. Yeah.
And something inside told me the same something that like got me out of all my danger in Iraq, that told me
Yeah.
to move out of my chair, and then a piece of shrapnel would have taken me out.
Right.
That same voice was like, don't drive there, you're going to die. So I drove to the ER that's close, and as soon as I pulled up, it was like the analogy of like when you have to go to the washroom really bad and you're driving around and you're like, I'll wait till I go home. And as soon as you pull into your driveway, you're like, it's emergency. I
Yeah.
pulled into the ER, and as soon as I got out of my truck, it was like it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like an elephant was sitting on my chest with daggers, and couldn't feel my arm, and my
Oh
jaw
my
hurt so
gosh.
bad. And went inside, and I was like, hi, sorry to bother you. I think I'm having a heart attack. And I was like, do I have to wait? And they were like,
Oh
are you
my
okay? I
gosh.
could hardly stand up. And they were like, no, no, no. How'd you get here? And I was like, I drove. And they're like, what? And I said I was from I go to the VA normally. And they're like, oh, you're a soldier. That's such a soldier thing to do.
Yeah,
And
for real. Oh my
but
gosh.
yeah, luckily I got there fast enough. So from the time that the pain started to the time that they went up through my artery to look at what was going on, it was within an hour. So he said because I got there so fast that I really didn't do any damage to my heart, which was amazing to
Yeah.
hear. And because guys are in general very, very stubborn about going to the doctor, and veterans on top of it, you got two
Oh
stubborn
yeah, it's a double
groups of
there.
people.
Yeah.
So luckily I went to the doctor, but yeah, they said it was a fluke. They think that just my piece of plaque in my artery went to my heart and gave me a heart attack because I didn't
Oh
have high
man.
blood pressure. I didn't have high cholesterol. My arteries weren't packed enough where it would have been an issue. But
Right.
it's like, because you're so young, we're going to rotor root whatever you have going on.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I had two arteries that were like 30%, and they
Okay.
fixed them. And he's like, now going forward, your arteries are clean. Just live a good lifestyle. And so I thank Catch a Lift Fund for sure, because that was my path. That helped me to get to where I'm at now, and I'm just going to continue with that and hopefully give back to others that are trying to get on that journey, that need that support or whatever.
Well, we're so glad to hear that, you're doing better now. You're able to get to the hospital quick enough and everything, and that you are on this, this fitness and wellness lifestyle that you're living. That's just absolutely tremendous, and we're so honored to be able to continue to support you in that. Um, what's kind of left for your Matthias, like recovery wise, or are you still kind of on profile with that, or where are you at?
So it was kind of funny when I was about to die. So I felt like I was going to die for like 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. I sent a text message to my ex-wife and was like, if I don't, I don't know if I'm going to make it. If I don't, tell my son I love him.
Yeah.
That was a hard text message for sure. But then on top of it, I was just like, please give me a little more time. Like,
Yeah.
I'm doing good stuff, and, but luckily I was given more time, and that's good. And so I was given the okay to start doing everything again. I got back in the gym. I got the okay after about a month. They checked my heart out. They're going to check in 2 more months. They just had me on a lot of different pills. But I feel like I have energy to spare. It's
Yeah.
incredible the amount of energy I have now. I think it's a combination of not dying and then also just the extra blood that I'm getting, I guess. But I haven't had coffee since December 27th. I totally cut all that stuff out, all the bad stuff. I go out with my friends still, and I don't drink. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? I'm just trying to get healthy. I want to be around for my son for as long as I can. So
That's well, like I said, we're so honored to be able to continue to support that wellness journey for you, Mathius. I have one last question for you today.
sure.
What does being a catch lift veteran athlete mean to you?
It means a lot. I mean, it means that I'm able to, it's kind of the same thing where people want a college degree for jobs just because they want to know that you're going to show up and you can complete something.
Yeah.
This is just teaching me again that if I put my mind to something and I want it, I can complete it. So just going through it and getting congratulations from you guys on completing the program and stuff like that is amazing. And I would love to be in a position once I shed the weight that I want to shed and I get to that weight that I want. I would love to go to school and be a personal trainer and try to give back as much as I can to others. And see if there's any opportunity for me to join the team and see if there's anything I could do as a volunteer or anything, just a coach, a mentor or something. But yeah, I'm not done. I'm not done for sure.
Oh, I know you're not. I know you're not in so many different areas, and I can't wait to continue to follow your journey. And it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you. We certainly thank you for your service to our great country and the service you continue to give in so many different areas, Mathius.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
We're so thankful for another experience to highlight one of our amazing Cal veteran athletes. Thank you for tuning in this week. A special thank you to Mathius for sharing your story and your light with us all today. It was absolutely tremendous. Don't forget to join us every Wednesday live at 1 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for a chance to win Cal swag and to chat with your brothers and sisters. If you liked today's episode, please be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and leave us a review on your favorite streaming service. Until next week, keep it real and stay Cal strong.